everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, back once again with another massive news update. We have news of, well, there's lots to get through today. We have news of a potential change to the WWE Network, a potential sort of two-tiered system. We have all the updates on that in just a second. Also some news about Daniel Cormier and a potential role for him in the future in WWE. At least that's what Fox seem to want. So that could be a little bit of a clue as to the role that they want him in. But again, we'll reveal all that in due course. Also, Seth Rollins has picked a massive independent superstar who came into NXT recently as his dream future opponent. And finally, John Cena has said quite a few things on a radio interview with SiriusXM, but the most important one is regarding WrestleMania 35 next April. So without any further ado, let's get into it and let's take a look at all of the lovely news. So firstly, according to PW Insider, WWE are looking to potentially introduce that rumoured, it's been previously speculated, that rumoured two-tiered system on the WWE Network. Apparently the more exclusive tier would be for $15 rather than $9.99 and would include, this is the crucial thing that's kind of sparked this whole story, would include potentially house show footage or live event footage, or WWE Live I think they officially call it, but house show footage. This has all come about because WWE ran a big house show over the weekend and did so with a smaller crew, without the usual massive production trucks and everything like that. Now apparently, according to PW Insider, this was an experimental crew to see if this could be done on a smaller scale so that they could basically record it and put it out on the network with increasing regularity, I'm guessing. Now, this to me seems a little bit strange. Would this mean that house shows would change the way they are? Because obviously silly things tend to happen on house shows, things that would break the usual storyline structure of a feud or whatever, or change the momentum in a way. Basically, if every house show was shown, it could have a massive impact on the televised product, especially in terms of momentum, storyline, wins and losses, that sort of thing. Now, on the other hand, would this mean that the house shows would be changed themselves, the way that they're done, the way that they're performed? Would they become a lot more predictable and samey? Or, on the other hand, would they just be put up and it's kind of just acknowledged by everybody that this isn't canon, this isn't part of the usual flow of things, this isn't part of your usual Raw and SmackDown lineup? I don't really know. It would be very interesting to see so if that was the case anyway, but yes, that's the rumour, and apparently they would be included as part of this new rumoured exclusive upper tier for $15. Next up, according to Wrestling Observer Radio, Fox want Daniel Cormier, the UFC heavyweight champion, to commentate on SmackDown Live. This initially sounds ridiculous, I know, because Daniel Cormier is an elite level UFC fighter. What would he be doing going off to WWE and staying behind an announce table? But there are two major reasons why this could well be plausible. The first is that Daniel Cormier isn't a particularly young man anymore. He's not, at the start of his UFC career. He's already established himself as one of the best of all time in the eyes of many, and would be even more so, I guess, if it weren't for those couple of losses he suffered against John Jones. Controversial losses, given John Jones's then troubles with being busted for steroids, essentially. But Daniel Cormier is still regarded as an elite level UFC fighter and one of the best ever, and I don't think he would lose anything by taking a step away from the UFC. And that brings me on to my second point. Daniel Cormier is unashamedly a massive wrestling fan. Not only is he a wrestling fan, but if you've ever seen DC interviewed in any sort of situation, he does have that natural spark and that natural charisma that would really lend itself well to television. So I think this isn't too outlandish a claim, I guess, by Fox. It would still be a massive coup for WWE to bring him in, of course it would, but at the same time, they've already brought Ronda Rousey in. A lot of people were skeptical about that. Why couldn't they bring in someone like Daniel Cormier to be a commentator on SmackDown Live? But this does lead us to think, what does this mean for SmackDown Live? We've all heard the reports that Fox wants SmackDown to be more sports orientated, less sort of goofy and wrestly, more like serious sports. This is a legitimate contest. A little bit more, I guess, like how the upper tier programs in New Japan are presented, probably not to that degree exactly, but a little bit more, a nudge in that direction. This is apparently to do with Fox wanting to be able to cross-promote SmackDown with the various other sporting programs on their network, and that makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, will that really fit with Vince McMahon's vision of what pro wrestling should be, or what sports entertainment should be? And if this is the case, and if Fox get their way and they do get Daniel Cormier in and all that sort of thing, does this mean that SmackDown is set to change a lot more than we previously thought? Will it not really resemble the old sort of WWE wrestling show anymore? Will it be something a lot more realism based and a lot more different, I guess? And if that does happen, will Raw follow suit, or will there be two distinct brands now on WWE, both with their individual styles? This simple story about Fox wanting Daniel Cormier has sprouted a whole bunch of new questions, and we hope to stay on top of them as the months progress next year up to that Fox deal. And finally, some little bits and pieces from the likes of Seth Rollins and John Cena, who were giving interviews this week for various places and said some pretty interesting stuff. First of all, Seth Rollins was talking to WWE's official Facebook page and revealed that he really wants to wrestle Matt Riddle in the future. He said that yes, he's a newcomer to WWE, but he's got a great style. I'd love to see how our styles mesh together. And I was just reading this thinking, yes, I also want to see that immediately. I don't know how much of an indication this is as to how quickly Matt Riddle will climb the ranks in WWE. I guess the fact that you've already got one of the top stars on the main roster signaling you out and saying, look, I want to wrestle you, that's a pretty good indication, I guess, of how quickly he may rise through the ranks. But then again, nothing is certain in developmental or in NXT. We've seen people rise much quicker than we'd have anticipated, like Elias, for example. We've seen people stick around much longer. I, for one, already expected, say, Aleister Black to be on the main roster, and he's not yet. So there's no real way of telling, but it was still an interesting thing for Seth Rollins to say. And finally, John Cena did an interview with SiriusXM where it was one of those interviews for a radio station where the questions are submitted by children. And it's a bit of a nice, it makes the guests look like they're really understanding and good with kids and that sort of thing. But then this was John Cena, who is really good with kids and is really charismatic and is really, lovable in a way if you're not a wrestling fan especially, and you don't know the history of John Cena winning all the time. But he took some questions from some children and answered them in very interesting fashion. One of the questions regarded WrestleMania 35, and he promised not only, he didn't just promise everyone, he promised children that he'd be there at WrestleMania 35. So I guess that means that John Cena's going to be there at WrestleMania 35. Didn't specify who's going to be wrestling or if he was going to be wrestling, but he did say that he was going to be there. So I guess you can't lie to children. That's probably got to be true. He also took some questions like, who is your favourite opponent of all time? Who is your most difficult opponent of all time? And he said that Brock Lesnar was the most difficult opponent of all time and that The Rock was his favourite opponent of all time. So nice little tidbits there. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching this lovely little news update. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to Jack a Jobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic and check out our Patreon too, patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, of course, obviously, if you haven't already, to hit subscribe and to join us.